Family, friends, I have an announcement.
No, not here. What is this?
I must speak the truth. This marriage is a lie.
Please stop.
I cannot. How could you do this to me?
I didn't, I swear.
Don't you dare blame her.
What's going on?
You betrayed me.
Oh my God, no!
112 guests had just finished clapping when Tunde lifted his glass, smiled at the crowd, and said the one sentence that split the room in half. "I cannot marry a woman who will wear my ring," he said, voice smooth and confident, "while another woman is carrying my first child." The music stopped before the DJ even touched the controls. A fork dropped somewhere near the dessert table. One woman gasped so sharply it sounded like a cry. Then Tunde turned, extended his hand toward the entrance, and all eyes followed. A woman in an emerald dress stood there with one palm resting lightly on her stomach. She did not look embarrassed. She looked prepared. The hall, moments ago full of gold lights, laughter, and champagne, suddenly felt too small to hold the shame that rushed through it. At the center of the room sat Amara in her engagement gown, shoulders bare, neck wrapped in coral beads, the diamond ring on her finger catching the chandelier light. She did not scream. She did not stand. She did not throw her drink. Her fingers moved instead to the old bronze bracelet around her wrist, the one her grandmother had given her years ago. Then, slowly, almost invisibly, she lifted her eyes to Mama Ife. And the old woman, seated 3 tables away in a deep, wine-colored head wrap, gave one small nod. Not now. Wait. Because while 112 people in that hall believed they were watching a bride's life collapse in public, Amara had been waiting for this exact moment for 19 days. The engagement party was being held at the Royal Palms Hall in Lagos, a glass-walled event space overlooking the lagoon, dressed in ivory roses, hanging candles, and gold fabric that shimmered every time the air conditioning vents pushed a soft breeze across the room. Every detail had been selected by Amara herself. The hand-painted welcome board, the live string trio near the staircase, the family photo wall, the 3-tier cake decorated with sugar orchids. The guests had arrived in silk, lace, sequins, and confidence. Business partners, church elders, Tunde's investors, Amara's cousins from Ibadan, women from her mother's old women's fellowship. Even District Registrar Afolayan had accepted an invitation, though he rarely attended private events. People had said it looked less like an engagement party and more like the opening of a dynasty. And in a way, it was supposed to be. Amara Ezenwa was not just some bride in a beautiful dress. She was the only granddaughter of the late Chief Ezenwa, the man whose name still sat on half the land titles around their local government district, and whose hospitality company had quietly grown into one of the most respected family-owned businesses in the region. But Amara never wore that legacy loudly. She was not arrogant. She did not lead with her surname. She was the kind of woman who said thank you to waiters, remembered drivers' names, and made room for the shyest person in the conversation. That softness made people underestimate her. Tunde had underestimated her most of all. They had met 16 months earlier at a business and community fundraising breakfast in Victoria Island. Tunde was on stage that morning, talking about entrepreneurship, vision, expansion, and building wealth for the next generation. He had a voice people trusted immediately. Warm, polished, controlled. The kind of man who shook your hand and held eye contact just long enough to make you feel important. Amara had attended because one of the hotel group's community projects was sponsoring school meals in 2 nearby districts, and she was there to review the partnership. She noticed him because he noticed everyone. He called older women Ma and actually listened when they spoke. He bent down to greet a cleaner who nearly dropped a tray. He laughed easily, not too loudly. And when he sat beside Amara during the second panel, he did not start by bragging. He asked what she cared about. That was how he got in, not with force, with attention. 3 dates later, he knew her favorite tea, the story behind her bronze bracelet, the fact that she hated people who were rude to service staff, and the way she always checked whether everyone at the table had food before eating herself. He learned her carefully, and what he learned, he used beautifully. For the first 6 months, Tunde seemed like answered prayer. He sent food to her office when she worked late. He drove to Abeokuta with her when Mama Ife needed a hospital review. He remembered the anniversary of Chief Ezenwa's passing and brought white lilies without being asked. When Amara got overwhelmed managing board meetings for the Ezenwa Hospitality Trust, he rubbed the tension from her shoulders and told her she did not always have to be strong. That was the thing about clever men. When they lie, they do not always lie with words. Sometimes they lie with consistency. Sometimes they lie with kindness. Sometimes they lie by becoming exactly what you prayed for until you stop checking whether God actually sent them. Mama Ife had never been fully convinced. She did not dislike Tunde. She simply did not trust men who arrived too polished. The first time she watched him greet 10 different people at Sunday lunch without missing a beat, she said quietly to Amara later, "A man who knows how to wear 10 faces in one afternoon usually keeps the truest one for darkness." Amara laughed then. She was in love. And love is often the first curtain pride pulls across wisdom. The proposal happened 8 months after they met. Tunde arranged a private dinner on the rooftop of one of the family's smaller boutique hotels. There were lanterns, a violinist, a table laid with white linen. By the time dessert came, half the staff had vanished from the terrace on cue. Tunde dropped to one knee, opened the ring box, and told Amara she was the piece he had been building toward his whole life. She cried. She said yes. Mama Ife smiled when the family heard the news, but that same evening, while others celebrated, she asked one question. Did he love you before he knew exactly what your name could open for him? Amara kissed her grandmother's cheek and said, "He loves me, Mama." Mama Ife nodded, but her eyes held the kind of silence old women keep when they have already seen a storm forming beyond the hills. The first cracks did not come loudly. They came dressed like progress. Tunde's logistics company, which had always been respectable but modest, suddenly began expanding. A second office, then a third, new staff, a bigger apartment, more expensive suits. Meetings that ran later into the night. New words entered his mouth almost daily. Private equity, bridge financing, strategic leverage, foreign-backed expansion. He said them with confidence, like a man climbing quickly. And Amara, who had grown up around wealth quiet enough not to need performance, tried not to judge what she did not understand. Still, small things began to shift. Tunde started taking calls on the balcony. He began turning his phone face down during dinner. He stopped discussing details and started delivering polished summaries instead. Whenever Amara asked simple questions, his answers sounded rehearsed. Not rude, just sealed. Then came Zara Bello. Her name appeared first in conversation as a consultant. "Tough woman," Tunde said one night while loosening his tie. "Smart on brand positioning, exactly what the company needed." Later, her name appeared in payment records during one of the financial review sessions Amara happened to glance through while waiting for Tunde in his study. Bello Creative Strategies. Consulting fee. 12 million naira. 3 weeks later, another payment. Then another. Amara asked him about it gently. Tunde did not look up from his phone. Expansion costs money, he said. Not every woman needs to understand every document. He smiled when he said it. That smile hurt more than if he had shouted. Because contempt spoken softly has a way of lodging deeper. Amara did not argue. But something inside her moved. Not heartbreak. Not yet. Recognition. The kind that begins when a woman realizes the man in front of her has stopped treating her like a partner and started treating her like a hurdle. A week later, she found the first real proof. Not by snooping wildly, by noticing what did not belong. Tunde had left early for a breakfast meeting and forgotten his tablet on the dining chair. It kept buzzing with incoming messages. Amara did not touch it at first. Then a preview flashed across the locked screen. She still trusts you. Keep the engagement date. It gives us time. No name, no context, just that line. Her pulse changed. She lifted the tablet. It was not fully locked. Only the messaging app was open beneath the screen. The sender was saved as ZB. There were months of conversation. Not just flirtation. Planning. Travel receipts. Property discussions. Drafts of presentations. Jokes about the rich bride who thinks love is enough. And then there was the message that made Amara sit down before her legs gave way. Once the traditional marriage is done, moving the Ikoyi collateral becomes easier. After that, she can cry all she wants. Ikoyi collateral. Amara knew exactly what that meant. One of the Ezenwa Trust properties, an old waterfront parcel held through a family vehicle, had been temporarily referenced during a financing conversation Tunde once said was just exploratory. He had promised nothing would ever move without her written approval. Amara read the message again, then again. She did not cry. She photographed everything. Every chat, every attachment, every transfer mention, every joke made at her expense. And when Tunde came home that evening with perfume on his collar and a story about traffic, she listened to him finish. Then served dinner. Then smiled. Because by then, she understood that shock was a luxury she could no longer afford. The next morning she drove to Abeokuta and placed her phone in front of Mama Ife. Her grandmother adjusted her glasses, read the messages in silence, then set the phone down so carefully it looked ceremonial. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Since yesterday," Amara said. "How long has he been using your name?" Amara swallowed. "Maybe longer than I wanted to believe." Mama Ife sat back and looked. Not angry, but old in a way truth can make old people look when disappointment returns wearing a familiar face. Then she said the sentence Amara would remember for the rest of her life. "Do not break in front of a man who is borrowing your future." That same day, Mama Ife called Barrister Okorie, the family lawyer who had handled trust structures for 23 years. By evening, Amara knew the problem was even worse than betrayal. Tunde had done what many greedy men do when access begins to look like ownership. He had mistaken proximity for permission. Using forged internal authorization papers and a duplicate signature file lifted from old board documents, he had referenced one of the Ezenwa Trust assets in financing documents tied to his expansion plans. Not fully sold, not legally transferred, but leveraged enough to create exposure if no one moved quickly. Worse, the shell company connected to Zara had been positioned to benefit from the new arrangement. Romance had never been separate from business. It was part of the business. Amara sat through the explanation with both hands around a cup of tea gone cold. When Barrister Okorie finished, he asked whether she wanted immediate police action. Mama Ife answered before she did. No. The lawyer looked up. Not yet, the old woman said. A man who plans humiliation should meet his consequences in the same language he prepared for another. That was how the plan began. Not for vengeance without reason, for exposure with proof. Over the next 19 days, Amara became impossible to read. She moved through the engagement preparations exactly as expected. She chose fabrics, confirmed menu tastings, answered Tunde's late-night texts with short warmth. She even thanked Zara in one email for her consulting support after being formally copied into a project thread. If Zara was surprised, she hid it. If Tunde sensed danger, greed blinded him to it. Greed often does. When people believe the prize is already in their hands, they stop checking the shadows. Privately, Barrister Okorie prepared injunction papers freezing any attempted movement tied to the trust asset. The registrar's office reviewed title references. 2 investors who had been invited to the engagement party received quiet background packets that would only be opened if needed. Mama Ife personally reviewed the guest list and added 3 names herself. Chief Balogun, one of Tunde's most important backers. Registrar Afolayan, whose presence alone made documentation hardened to deny. And Pastor Dyke, the family minister who had been scheduled to bless the couple publicly that night. If truth needed witnesses, Mama Ife intended to seat them near the front. 3 days before the party, Tunde became almost cheerful. He complimented Amara's dress fitting. He kissed her forehead. He even brought her flowers. That was when she knew he planned to do it publicly. Men preparing betrayal often become strangely gentle right before impact. Not because guilt softens them, because performance excites them. The day of the engagement party arrived bright and hot. By afternoon, the hall glowed with gold light and camera flashes. Amara dressed slowly. Her gown was champagne gold with hand-beaded sleeves and a fitted waist that opened into a soft train. Mama Ife fastened the bronze bracelet onto her wrist herself. Not the diamond first, the bracelet first. Tonight, the old woman said, meeting her eyes in the mirror, do not speak like a victim. Speak like the owner of your own name. Amara nodded. Under the head table in the hall, taped carefully behind a fold of fabric, sat a flat document case. Inside were copies. The injunction notice, the forensic summary, the fraud filing, revocation letters, bank tracing documents. Enough paper to turn romance into evidence and charm into ash. By 7:30, the hall was full. By 8, speeches had begun. Tunde looked handsome in a black tuxedo with velvet lapels. He laughed with investors. He shook hands with elders. He played the role perfectly. Amara watched him and felt a strange calm settle over her. Not because she did not love who she thought he had been, but because clarity had finally killed confusion. And confusion is what keeps many women tied to men who are already gone. The MC invited the couple forward for the ceremonial toast. Guests clapped, phones lifted. Someone shouted, "Speech!" Tunde took the microphone with the confidence of a man who believed the room belonged to him. He thanked the families, thanked God, thanked the guests. Then he paused, smiled, and said he needed to speak with honesty before entering marriage. That was when Mama Ife straightened in her chair. That was when Amara touched the bracelet. That was when Zara stepped fully into view from near the champagne wall. Tunde inhaled like an actor about to begin his best scene. "I have discovered," he said, "that a man must follow truth, not pressure." A murmur moved through the crowd. His mother frowned. Pastor Dyke lowered his glass. Tunde turned toward Amara. "You are a good woman," he said. "But life has presented me with reality. Another woman is carrying my first child. And I will not stand here pretending when my future heir is already alive in someone else's womb." The room broke open. 2 aunties rose at once. Someone said, "Jesus!" A plate shattered near the service station. Zara placed one delicate hand on her stomach and lifted her chin. Tunde reached for her wrist and drew her forward. He did it slowly, like he wanted every camera in the room to catch the image. "This is Zara," he said, "and I have chosen to do the honorable thing." Honorable. That word nearly made one of Amara's cousins lunge across the table. But before anyone could reach the stage, before the noise could turn to pure chaos, one voice cut through it all. "Sit down." Mama Ife had stood. She did not shout. She did not wave her arms. Yet the authority in that old woman's tone moved through the room like a gavel. Conversations died mid-breath. Even Tunde turned. Mama Ife took one step forward, then another, one hand resting on her walking cane, eyes fixed not on Zara, but on Tunde. "Young man," she said, "if you came here to bury my granddaughter, you should have checked whether the ground belonged to you first." A sound moved through the crowd. Not quite laughter, not quite shock. Something sharper. Amara rose then, slowly, with the kind of steadiness that makes a room realize it may have misunderstood who is in danger. She bent once, reached beneath the edge of the head table, and pulled out the document case. Tunde's expression changed for the first time that night, only slightly, but Amara saw it. The first crack. She placed the case on the table, opened it, and removed the papers one by one. No trembling hands, no tears, no screaming. Just order. "I have known about Zara for 19 days, she said. The room went silent enough to hear camera autofocus clicks. "I have known about the pregnancy for 12. Zara's face tightened. Tunde took a step forward. "Amara, don't do drama." She lifted one hand. He stopped speaking. "For 19 days, she repeated. "I have also known that you used forged authorization tied to my family trust, attempted to leverage restricted property for your expansion, and structured shell transactions through this woman's consulting company." Chief Balogan stood so fast his chair tipped backward. Tunde's mother looked from him to the papers and back again, like her mind had lost footing. Amara slid the top sheet across the table. "Injunction order," she said. "Filed this afternoon." Second sheet. "Formal revocation of all authority, real or imagined, connected to any Ezenwa Trust property." Third sheet. "Financial tracing summary linking your company's expansion commitments to forged supporting references." Fourth sheet. Fraud complaint. The word landed hard. Fraud. Not scandal. Not heartbreak. Fraud. Zara's hand fell slowly from her stomach. Tunde laughed once, too quickly. "This is nonsense," he said. "You can't freeze what I built." Mama Ife answered him. "She built the ground under your feet." Amara turned toward the guests. "Some of you were invited here to celebrate love. Others," she said, glancing at the front tables, "were invited because truth sometimes needs witnesses who understand paper, not just pain." She handed copies to Registrar Afolayan and Chief Balagun. Neither man hesitated. Tunde moved then, faster, trying to grab the file. Amara stepped back before he reached it. "These are copies," she said calmly. "The originals are already with counsel and regulators." That was the second crack, visible this time. The color left his face. Zara looked at him sharply, not with affection, with alarm. Because that was the moment she understood something she should have asked much earlier. Men who betray one woman for ambition are not trustworthy business partners either. Chief Balagun adjusted his glasses and scanned the tracing summary. His jaw locked. Then he asked without looking up, "Did you collateralize discussions using trust-linked property you did not own?" Tunde opened his mouth, closed it. Pastor DK sat down slowly and removed his cap. No blessing was coming tonight. Amara turned to Zara. "I do not hate you," she said. "But if you were told this man was building a future from his own strength, ask him why every road to that future led through my name." Zara stared at Tunde now. The confidence with which she had entered the hall began draining from her features, one slow degree at a time. "Tunde?" she asked. He did not answer her. That silence answered enough. One of Amara's cousins began to clap, just once, sharp, then stopped. No one joined. This was no longer entertainment. It had become judgment. Tunde tried one last time to seize control. He grabbed the microphone again. "This is emotional blackmail," he snapped. "She can't stand that I made another choice." Amara looked at him with something colder than anger. Pity. "No," she said softly. "I can stand another choice. What you cannot stand is another consequence." Then she did something no one in the room expected. She slipped the diamond ring from her finger. Not violently, not theatrically. She simply removed it, placed it on top of the injunction papers, and pushed it toward him across the tablecloth. "You wanted to replace me in public," she said. "Take your ring in public, too." Tunde did not touch it. Not because he didn't want to, because every eye in the room had turned that ring into evidence of failure. His mother began to cry quietly. Not loud enough to interrupt, just enough for those nearby to hear. Mama Ife moved to Amara's side and rested one hand between her shoulders. The gesture was small. It said everything. Chief Balogun folded the papers, tucked them under his arm, and said to Tunde, "My office will be in touch through legal channels only." Registrar Afolayan asked for the names of the filing officers. Pastor DK stood, looked at Tunde for a long moment, and walked out without another word. Within 5 minutes, the engagement party had stopped being a celebration and become the place where a man's carefully assembled image came apart in formal wear. Zara did not leave immediately. She stood there, face unreadable, then finally said the sentence Amara would think about later. "You told me it was yours." Tunde hissed her name under his breath, but she had already stepped away from him. The arrogance was gone now. So was the glamour. Pregnancy had not made her powerful. It had simply made her useful to the wrong man. By the time the first half of the guests began leaving, Tunde was alone in the center of the room with a ring he could not pick up and a future that had suddenly become very expensive. The consequences arrived fast. Greedy men often believe consequences travel slowly because truth took time to catch them. But once truth arrives at the right address, it moves quickly. By Monday morning, Chief Balogan had suspended all pending investment conversations. By Tuesday, 2 lenders requested document reviews. By Wednesday, a compliance inquiry had been opened around representations made in Tunde's financing decks. Barrister Okorie moved with surgical speed. Internal notices went out. Protective filings expanded. Every legal door Tunde had hoped to push with charm was suddenly locked by paper. Zara called him 7 times the day after the party. He answered once. That conversation lasted less than 4 minutes and ended with her throwing a glass candle holder against the wall of her apartment. Because betrayal feels glamorous only when you believe you are walking into a better room. The moment you realize you were only helping someone rob another woman, the mirror changes. Tunde's mother came to see Mama Ife the following week. She arrived without makeup, eyes swollen, shame folded into every careful word. She asked for mediation, for privacy, for time. Mama Ife listened without insulting her. Then Amara spoke. "With respect, Ma," she said, "your son did not choose privacy when he planned humiliation. He chose an audience. I simply made sure truth had one too." The older woman wept quietly. She did not defend him after that. There was nothing left sturdy enough to build a defense from. 3 weeks later, Zara left the city for Abuja to stay with an older sister. Rumors spread that she had tried to salvage her consulting firm names separately, but no serious client wanted to touch anything connected to the scandal. Not because people are moral, because people fear contamination when greed becomes public. Tunde's office remained open, but it no longer buzzed. 2 senior staff resigned. 1 vendor filed suit over unpaid invoices. A flashy man can survive many sins in private. Public disgrace paired with financial fraud is harder to style your way out of. He came to Amara's apartment 6 weeks after the party, not the family house. He knew better than that. By then, Amara had moved temporarily into one of the trust's quiet, serviced residences near the old marina while final legal cleanups continued. The security guard called upstairs first. She almost said no, then told them to let him wait in the downstairs lounge. He looked smaller when she saw him. Not physically, spiritually. Like someone had removed the stage lighting and left him in ordinary daylight for the first time in years. "I made mistakes," he said. She did not sit. He spoke of pressure, of fear, of how the pregnancy had complicated everything, of how he had meant to explain, of how things moved too far, of how ambition can poison judgment. Men like Tunde always become philosophers after collapse. Amara let him finish. Then she said, "No, pressure did not make you cruel. Pressure revealed how useful cruelty already was to you." He looked down. She continued, "You did not betray me because you were confused. You betrayed me because you thought I would survive it quietly while you kept the benefit." His eyes filled then, or nearly did. Maybe they were real tears. Maybe not. It no longer mattered. "I loved you," he said. Amara believed he believed that. Some people do love you in the limited way thieves love houses they intend to strip for copper and leave standing. She answered carefully. "What you loved," she said, "was access wrapped in affection." Then she turned toward the door. The conversation was over. By the end of that quarter, formal charges had not yet become criminal, but the civil exposure alone was enough to break the image he had built. Settlements began. Assets were reviewed. His expansion stopped. And for the first time since she had met him, Amara slept without waking at 3 a.m. to replay words that no longer had any hold on her. Months later, the old waterfront parcel in Ikoyi that Tunde had tried to circle through borrowed paper was placed into a new family project. Not sold, not hidden, built. A women's enterprise and hospitality training center attached to the Ezenwa Trust, designed to train young women in management, event operations, food services, digital booking systems, and financial literacy. Amara led the planning herself. Mama Ife attended every review meeting until the stairs became too much for her knees. At the foundation ceremony, there were no chandeliers, no dramatic speeches, no imported roses. Just sunlight, fresh concrete, family, workers, and a brass plaque waiting to be unveiled. Amara wore a simple white blouse and brown trousers. The bronze bracelet still circled her wrist. Mama Ife stood beside her, cane planted firmly on the ground, and asked whether she was happy. Amara looked at the rising frame of the building, the women in hard hats reviewing plans, the young interns taking notes, the clean morning air, and smiled. "I am peaceful," she said. Her grandmother nodded. "That is better." Because happiness can be noisy. Peace is usually quieter. It lives in rooms where explanation has ended. It lives in mornings without dread. It lives in knowing that what almost destroyed you has instead become material you built with. Years later, people would still talk about the engagement party, about the pregnant lover, about the old woman who stood up, about the ring on the table. But that was never the part Amara held closest. The part she remembered most was the small nod before everything began. The signal from one woman to another. Wait. Not because silence is weakness, because timing is power. Some women fight with tears, some with noise, some with fire. Amara fought with evidence, restraint, and the refusal to let a man rewrite her worth in front of strangers. And that night, in a room full of witnesses, she did not just lose the wrong man. She reclaimed the right future.